Good morning, everyone. At this time, please welcome to the stage the Senior Accessibility Advisor, Strategist, and Business Implementation for Acquium Global Access, Pina Dentino.
Thank you, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It is my great pleasure to be here this morning to announce and introduce our keynote speaker. Some of you may know her. Some of you, I'd be surprised if there's somebody in this room that doesn't know her, actually. But I think every time I spend time with Jutta, I learn something new about her. And one of the things I've learned and continuously reminded is how much within her life, from the time that she was just a little child, she has been giving back to people with her kindness, her gentleness, and her willingness to not only advocate but defend those people as not just persons with disabilities, but the underserved in general. So her efforts to help newcomers, her efforts to build capacity for persons with disabilities and build capacity for those who want to support persons with disabilities is immeasurable. She started in accessibility more than 40 years ago, and for the last 30 years has been leading the Inclusive Design Research Center in Toronto, where she's also incubated an inclusive design program that has been running now since 2011, and we are proud to see today a lot of the graduates from her program being here in this room and demonstrating their leadership. And all of this because of what Jutta has invested, not just in Canada, but globally, working with the G3 ICT, working with the ISO standards, and now looking at standardizing AI. It is my great pleasure and honor not only to introduce a colleague, a peer, but my friend, Professor Jutta Treviranus. Thank you.
And of course, that starts me off blushing, which is a great beginning to a talk. Thank you so much, Pina. And I'm hoping that we can get my slides up. So, before my slides arrive, I have called this talk Accessible and Equitable Artificial Intelligence. And that is the topic of a standard that we've been developing in Canada specific to AI. There's been a ton of buzz about AI here at the conference. Good, we're there. One of the sayings about AI that I really like, that many friends within the field have said, is that AI should progress at the speed of trust. And one of the other sayings, though, that, however, I have heard here at the conference yesterday was to trust us, to break things, to make mistakes, to push forward. And to have the right to ask of us, of the many people that are here with disabilities, is you need to have a deeper understanding of the relationship between disability and technology. There's another saying relative to disability and technology that says, for most people, technology makes things convenient. If you have a disability, technology makes things possible. And therein lies an awesome responsibility. Technology is relied upon to speak, to read, to write, to learn, to affect the world, to navigate the world, to eat, to express love, to remember, to plan, even to breathe, and to live. And our relationship to technology, by necessity, is more intimate. It is essential because we have no choice. It is what makes things possible. This relationship also makes us more vulnerable. We should not have to give our trust to to an abusive partner, we are disproportionately vulnerable to the mistakes, to the breaking. And beyond guarding our homes, it is even implanted in our brains and in our vital organs. If you have a disability, the opportunities and the risks are at the extremes. Sorry, I'm not catching up. Oh, shoot. Press the wrong button. Okay. Technology. And there are undeniably quite a few extreme opportunities. We can recognize speech, gestures, patterns. We can find target objects. We can match or label objects. We can remember forever and remind on time. We can sort possible paths to find the optima, and we can detect common mistakes and correct them. AI is wonderful at mechanizing the formulaic. But this is not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about vulnerability. There is a less known and less heralded risk that is creating an infrastructure of disability discrimination. It is finding, matching, sorting, labeling, measuring, optimizing, calculating, analyzing people at scale. And therein lies the problem, because it is doing things that mean that we are the collateral damage. The way AI is currently designed is hostile to difference, and we are more than a little different. But this problem precedes AI. AI is mechanizing, accelerating, amplifying, and automating an existing problem. It's propagating discrimination faster, more efficiently, and more accurately. And unfortunately, despite the fact that there's an emergence of an entire AI ethics industry, it is missed by these AI ethics efforts. My first alarm happened about 10 years ago, and many of you have probably heard this story told, and I've heard it retold by quite a number of people, sometimes alarmingly. But my first alarm happened when I was invited by our Ontario Ministry of Transportation to help them celebrate their 100th anniversary. And they gave me an opportunity to test a number of automated vehicle learning models that would be used to guide vehicles through busy intersections. And knowing AI and knowing what AI is good at and what it isn't good at, I decided to test it with an unusual and unexpected scenario. And this was a friend of mine who pushed her wheelchair backwards through the intersection. And when I tested these learning models, all of them chose to proceed through the intersection, and if this had actually been within an actual vehicle in an intersection, they would have run her over. They all said, "Don't worry, these are immature, they haven't had enough data regarding people in wheelchairs and intersections. Come back when we've trained it and we've given it lots of data." When I came back, they all chose to run my friend over with greater confidence. They were confident that people in wheelchairs, and the data had told them that people in wheelchairs travel forward. And this, of course, set me on a 10-year journey of alarm. But it made sense, because I had a sense of this issue for quite some time. Over the 44 years that I've been working in the field, I've been collecting data points. I've been asking people, what do you need to thrive in your world, in your life, in your work, in your education? And it's a fairly multifaceted, highly diverse set of data. And the only way that I can actually plot it, and on the screen, I am describing most of the images that I will show, is as a very, very bad two-dimensional image of a multivariate scatter plot. And it looks like a normal distribution. And as in any normal distribution, there are 20% of the needs that are clustered around, 80% of the needs clustered around the middle 20% of the distribution. And the remaining 20% of the needs are at the 80% of the periphery. So it sort of follows Pareto's 80-20 rule as well, and I call it the human starburst. And one of the things that you'll note is that these dots that are at the periphery are far apart, while the dots in the middle are very close together, meaning that if your needs are in that center, then you are very much like other people within that center. But if your needs are out at the periphery, you're very different. People with disabilities are very different. And because of the way we've designed our world, because of economies of scale, because of advice like pay attention to the 80% that only require 20% of the effort and ignore those difficult 20% so that you can have quick wins. Design works if your needs are clustered in the middle. It doesn't work, or it gets worse and things become more difficult as you digress from the middle. And if you're out at the periphery, if your needs exist out there, then most designs won't work. And unfortunately, the same pattern happens in artificial intelligence. Predictions, decisions, determinations that are made by AI are highly accurate in the middle, become inaccurate as you move from the middle, and don't work as you get to the periphery. The predictions are wrong. And this ripples through every part of our lives, whether it is design that either fits or doesn't fit, whether Moore's law actually is true or not true, because while availability, reliability, functionality, and cost is getting better and better, if your needs are in the center, it's getting worse and worse as you are out at the periphery. Because as the speed of technology progresses, it is harder and harder to catch up. Knowledge, truth, evidence. We've reduced knowledge and evidence and truth to statistical evidence, quantified systems. And so if you cannot reach statistical significance, then your truth is not worth funding. The knowledge that we need to gain isn't going to earn a journal article, etc. You won't be published. Academics that study that are not supported as much. And the disparity even proceeds into our education, which is doubling down on creating standardized learners, work, which is looking for replaceable workers, and democracy, which has now been reduced to one person, one vote, so the trivial needs of the many outweigh the critical needs of the few. And of course, there's another side to this story, because those individuals in the periphery, those needs in the periphery, I'm going backwards again, are the ones that we really should be attending to. And this pattern that we have within all of our systems not only damages those individuals that have needs out at that periphery, but it damages all of us because of the way that we're doing things. We have mass production, mass communication, mass marketing, a popularity push, and we're depressing innovation because it causes greater conformance, lock-in. It reduces reliability, flexibility, extensibility, resilience, and responsiveness. And we are thereby reducing diversity and denying complexity. We're homogenizing toward a monoculture. And of course, as was stated by Klaus yesterday, the prediction with the greatest possibility is that at any time when you least expect it, with the greatest probability, we're all going to end up out at that periphery. And if we design our AI systems and our systems in general, then right out to the periphery, we have room for change and growth, and that is where we find innovation and weak signals. So, what's wrong? What is the problem? What am I concerned about in terms of AI? The assumptions of the pervasively deployed AI decision systems, the ones that are almost everywhere, making decisions in all of your lives, 90% of employers are using this, assume that past success equals future success. Optimizing data characteristics associated with past successes increases future successes. And the data characteristics that determine success need not be specified or known to the operators of the AI. And unlike some of the discussions of AI ethics concerns yesterday, it's more than addressing data gaps. It's not just about a data desert. It's more than removing human bias from algorithms so that the developers of AI who may be bigoted are not controlling the algorithms and creating bigoted algorithms. It's more than removing the stereotypes from the labels and proxies. Because bias toward an optimal pattern equals bias against difference. And AI is getting better and more accurate, and therefore getting more discriminatory, because the more data we have, the more ways we can be different. And this is pervasive. It's in employment, academic admissions, medical calculators and triage tools during the pandemic, policing and parole, immigration and refugee applications, tax auditing, loans, mortgages, security flagging. At a community level, we have evidence-based government investment, political platforms that are driven by AI, public health decisions, urban planning, emergency preparedness, security measures, and even those very trivial cumulative impacts are out there. News coverage, what products are marketed to whom, the GPS routes that you're advised to follow when you try to find somewhere, the supply chain priorities, the design features selected by companies. All of these are guided by these decision systems. And so what we have is bad, unfair, inaccurate decisions. And we are also, because we're unrecognized, like my friend who pushes her wheelchair backwards, flagged in suspicion systems. Because we're unrecognized, we might be fraudulent, we might be a security risk. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last 10 years since my alarm started was to look at harm and incident databases. And many administrations have started to catalog what are the harms in incident databases. And unfortunately, this has become a very uncomfortable and awkward I told you so moment. There are disproportionate reports related to disability, whether it's parents with disability falsely flagged as unfit, false positive tax audits, false positive security flagging, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but believe me, there are many. And one of the main concerns of AI ethics systems is about privacy. But I think what is of greater concern to individuals with disabilities is not privacy, but data abuse and misuse. Because most people with disabilities have already bartered their privacy for essential services. Think of all the information you need to give up to get the services that you need. And privacy protections like anonymization at source don't work because you're unique, and anyone unique can be re-identified. And privacy protections like differential privacy, which remove the characteristics that might result in discrimination, eliminate all the helpful data that would allow the AI to understand you. And one of the things that I've realized is that statistical reasoning as the means of making decisions does harm to anyone out at that edge. Assuming that what we know about the majority applies to the minority does harm. And statistical discrimination even finds its way into those AI ethics measures. We're insignificant when determining the metrics and thresholds. We're invisible or insignificant in error testing. Rich Caruana, in another talk that I gave earlier, was saying you need a lot of deaths to flag the error in error systems AI that's used in warfare guidance. And AI ethics auditing tools are using things like cluster analysis and comparison. There's really no disability data cluster because we are too different. You can't detect bias against outliers or small minorities. So we're falling through the cracks and stranded at the edges of the bounded clusters used in AI ethics tools. Invisible in a risk-benefit framework. So we have here in the US a NIST risk-benefit framework, but if you're weighing the benefit against the risks, the benefits will outweigh those tiny, very diverse risks. An anomaly, merely an anecdote. So what we've done in Canada and what I'm working on is a draft standard. And we're doing this very specifically for disability because disability has the most extreme risk with respect to AI. And rather than catching up, we've decided that we need to lead. We need to think about how can we protect the individuals that are most vulnerable to the risks of AI. And because AI is traveling so quickly, it is a phased approach where we're starting with those automated decision systems based on data optimization and exploitation. And then we are moving next to the large language models and general AI, which seems to now have gained public attention. We're also trying to harmonize and layer this on top of existing AI guidance. So whether it's the guidance here in the US or the guidance that is in the EU AI Act or our ADA or Directive on Automated Decision Systems, we've done a fairly thorough scan to ensure that we're not asking for something different, that we're harmonized, but that we're making sure that people with disabilities who have that extra vulnerability, their needs are addressed. And so the things that we've done within this that are specific to disability is, first of all, in Canada, we have a commitment to nothing without us because everything is about us. And so we're looking at accessibility not just for the consumer, but also the participation of people with disabilities in the design, development, deployment, testing, evaluation of AI systems. We're looking at statistical discrimination, which goes beyond the bias that is flagged in many other of the AI guidance. And we're looking at cumulative harm. Most of our systems are based upon impact assessment or risk assessment. And of course, if you use impact assessment or risk assessment, there's nothing that you need to do with all of those supposedly trivial issues that arise with AI. But imagine if almost everything in your life is deciding against you, there is a cumulative harm that we need to think about. And we're worried about education. We want to systemically look at how can we advance this so that this does not progress. So it's in 4 parts, the standard. Accessible AI, equitable AI, organizational processes that support accessible and equitable AI, and then lastly, education. In terms of accessible AI, it's about ensuring that people with disabilities can participate in the full AI ecosystem. Designing and developing AI systems, implementing AI systems, consumers of AI systems. One of the things that we fail to hear in the lovely stories about how AI miraculously transforms lives is that if you need it the most, it actually works the worst. If your voice pattern is far different from the training pattern, then it's not going to work for you. If you live in an area where the AI hasn't been trained to recognize those packages or those signs, or in a language that it hasn't been trained in, it's not going to work for you. We are also wanting to ensure that the evaluation and the improvement of AI systems works for people with disabilities, and they can participate in that. And for equitable AI, we want to make sure that equitable treatment of people with disabilities as subjects of decisions and represented by AI. And within that, we are addressing first and foremost statistical discrimination, but also all of the other things that you find in many of the AI guidance, including the very good US AI Bill of Rights. Reliability, accuracy, and trustworthiness, freedom from negative bias, equity of decisions and outcome, safety, security, protection from data abuse, freedom from surveillance, freedom from discriminatory profiling, freedom from misinformation and manipulation, transparency, reproducibility and traceability, accountability, individual agency, informed consent and choice, support of human control and oversight, and addressing cumulative harms. In terms of the organizational processes, we talk about what processes need to be in place to achieve accessible and equitable AI. And there's a number of things that organizations need to do, not only to address the issues of vulnerability of people with disabilities, but to create an AI system that will work for everyone and that will not result in the types of harms that we're currently seeing. And lastly, we have education about accessible and equitable AI. So if you're learning about AI, you should at the same time be learning about accessible and equitable AI. And then the flip side, AI education should be accessible to people with disabilities. And lastly, education of AI. We should feed back into the AI systems that we're developing all the feedback, the mistakes, the problems that we're encountering. And that should be a continuous pipeline so that we can continuously improve AI. And we have within that every approach that we can possibly have. Like most other standards, there is a shall, should, and component to it. And some of the strategies that we are looking at is people with disabilities being exempt from AI decisions if in a data minority. And there, of course, we want to also protect that that doesn't become a second-class system, but has equivalence. Special recourse if you have a disability, but without the burden on the person with a disability to seek and to create and argue for that special recourse. And of course, the usual things that we see in other AI guidance, including informed subjects of decisions that AI is used in and require transparency regarding training data and decision systems. And we are looking at things like trust meters, where we have a declaration of what data is used to train the system, and an indicator showing the suitability of decision system to the instance before you. And so what we want to do is we want to progress with AI. We don't want to go against innovation, because if anyone needs innovation, if anyone needs something new to address all of the barriers we feel, it's people with disabilities. But we want to progress at the speed of trust, because we know that intelligence that works with the edge of our human starburst, our human scatterplot, is better able to adapt to change and respond to the unexpected, detect risk, transfer to new contexts, results in greater dynamic resilience and longevity, will reduce disparity, and may hold the key to our survival. And we'd love to continue the conversation. We have a number of people here from Canada who are working on the standards, and we'll have a panel at 11 o'clock where we discuss some of the frameworks within Canada. And I'd love to hear any questions that you might have. I know, it's not Jenny's talk yesterday, which was quite an uplifting. I worried about this because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this Debbie Downer thing. Yeah, Tim.
Good morning, Jutta. Thank you so much for this excellent talk. I'm in the back here. It's Peter.
Ah, great.
I'm very curious. You know, we talked yesterday, or we heard yesterday about the large data sets and about the need to get disability data into those large data sets, and the fact that we have such little disability data, and even if we had a lot, we would still be overwhelmed.
Yeah, full proportional representation still has statistical discrimination. Even if we had full proportional representation, it would be overwhelmed by the other data.
There are mechanisms for, if you will, filtering the results through a smaller data set. And I'm curious about any research or discussions you have around that approach to getting through this challenge.
Yeah, so large language models and generative AI, we have tuning systems that allow us to try to push the decisions in a more personalized direction or in a different direction. And we're certainly at our center experimenting with some of that. We are working on things like our Baby Bliss Spot project, where we decided, okay, if we were to experiment in doing things differently, who are the people that are most in need of this type of assistance? And so we're working with children and adults who are non-speaking. And there we've had some success in retuning the models. But one of the things alarming things that has happened is that some of the kids we've been working with and the adults are saying, but you know what, I'm losing my identity here because the system is fixing my grammar. It is offering me the average or typical things that someone would say. It is correcting everything, and I'm losing my quirky humor, and I'm losing all of the things that make me me. And so that's, I mean, while the large language models are lovely in transactional things, I think all of us are probably experiencing some of that reduction of difference. I gave a talk yesterday at a European conference, and I was accompanied by the next speaker who was talking about disability and employment, and what they touted as the way to address employment inequity was to flag for everyone what within their resume or within their application or within their interview would be used to discriminate against them, and to remove those things from their resume and from their CV, and not to mention them in the interview, which seems to be going in completely the wrong direction. Because if we're denying diversity and we're denying complexity, that is a really existential threat to us. Diversity is what fuels our progress and the innovation. But yes, Peter, to your question, there are, I think there are ways in which we can both tune the system's single-shot tuning, and I won't get too technical, and there are interesting experiments, and we're hoping that by flagging this issue of statistical discrimination, we're going to be able to do that. There are also algorithms which actually invert the prioritization. So rather than using data exploitation, they're using data exploration. So within the hiring tool, you try to find people that are diverse. You keep the essential requirements of the job, but the other things, you try to diversify the languages, you try to diversify a variety of other things that would make a much more resilient team. But unfortunately, those are not deployed very much. And those 90% of organizations that are using AI hiring tools are not actually, a minuscule number have been exploring that.
I'm on my way, sir. If you could state your name.
Thank you. Tim Cregan, Youth Access Board. I'd like to make 2 points. One, with regard to the comment you just made about people scrubbing their resumes for stuff that makes them interesting and quirky for fear that it will, reveal them as having a disability. I have hearing loss, so it's an invisible disability. Nobody sees it. It's not like I write it down in a piece of paper. But what I did do in my resume was I wrote down that I won moot court oral arguments for both writing and speaking. And then no one raised the issue because my qualifications went directly to the job. Everything else was irrelevant. Second question I have is, with regard to education, you talked about educating for AI. So I can understand in a context like this, where you have policymakers and you have industry and you have government all in the same room and we're all being sort of educated on the same page. How do you see education happening in a broader spectrum? How do you see that happening like at the university level or for the individual? Or what, do you see public service announcements? How do you see that playing out? And what points do you want to emphasize in your education?
Right.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I always say is this is not a binary choice, and there isn't just one silver bullet to address this. So especially within education, I think we need to produce the content and make it available to universities and high schools. We need to provide education in a variety of forms to people who understand the technology, to people who understand the policy. It can't just be a single sort of message. It has to be directed to people where they're at and where they think their priority interests are. So the education portion of our standard addresses a whole variety and a whole range of means of educating people in various roles and at various levels of understanding and interest. And I see Excel coming here. It's probably going to get me off the stage.
Jutta, thank you so very much. Please join me in thanking her for a fantastic presentation. So this will complete our morning plenary session. We will have our breakout session starting in exactly 10 minutes. And we will all reconvene here for the keynote from Peter Korn at 5:30, who would be talking about harnessing the velocity of constant change to advance accessibility, a very timely topic. So see you at 5:30 in this room.